Hello, thanks very much for joining me. Today I'm going to be working on this 12 by 16 canvas board, and I have a selection of colours here, some of which are opaque and some of which are transparent and semi-transparent, because I want to have a look at the contrast between the two. So there's palette knives and other things as well. There's my trusty white, and I'm going to be using palette knives and my silicone spatula. This is the little test piece that I've always done before any piece to see that the colours work, and I'm also going to use this spray, which is a mixture of clean water and flow enhancer. Working slightly differently this time, I'm actually going to work here on a proper easel, because I want to get a lot of running of paint. So I've wet the whole of that canvas board with the flow enhancer and water, and I'm just applying this paint, which is actually a phthalo blue-green, right at the top, and then letting it run. And I'm going to use this as the idea for the whole of the base for this painting. I really want it to be full of movement and full of layers of different colours. All of these colours that I'm using, firstly I will put them into the description, but I've also tested them to make sure that even when they blend together, they make colours that I am happy with. So I'm using a lovely violet here, which again is a transparent colour. So using the flow enhancer with the water, look at that lovely run. It's beautiful when you start getting that, and you can use your palette knife to actually move that paint about while it's wet. And this whole first layer is just a question of building up colour and using the transparent colour. This is a lovely darkish yellow colour, which is very transparent. So it means that I'm working with it over other colours. You can actually see them through it. And this actually is a reddish colour, which is opaque. Now the difference is that that is more of a solid colour. So that does not allow much sort of colours to show through it. It will actually kill anything that's underneath it. However, using that phthalo green over the top of it, it will blend, and the green is transparent, so it gives those different layered effects. So you can see all these drips that we've got going on. Every time I add the moisture, it makes an interesting pattern, and then we turn it around and see what else it does. Getting lots of different shapes. I only looked at this in the playback, but there also looks like a face in there. I haven't kept it, unfortunately, but yeah, there's definitely a face appears. It's amazing what you notice when you're looking back. So we're just adding more and more layers, and we're just spreading that across the canvas, trying to get the right direction. You can see now why I've used the easel, so that we can get that movement without having to keep picking it up and moving and tilting it. This canvas board is 12 by 16 inches in size, so it's a little bit larger than the ones that we've done before, but it gives a little bit more scope, but still enables us to use the same processes and the same equipment without having to struggle. And the beauty, because it's canvas board, is it's very firm, and the water will not make any difference to it. It won't make any warps or cockles. It takes it really well and stays nice and firm and flat for us. So mixing, you see how the red mixed with the purple has made it sort of a chalky colour, but we can use the catalyst to scrape into that. We may or we may not keep these effects, it doesn't matter. This is the fun part, because you're starting the process of building the groundwork to build on. The purple and the red look so pretty together. I'm using the metal palette knife now to pull that colour down, to give it some interest, some lines. And then I'm just going to actually put some white there to act as a little bit of a block. And what will happen, where the white paint is and the paint still runs into it, it will create little puddles and little effects of its own. And that's what I'm trying to encourage with this, little bits of interest. And just soften that with the brush there. I just want to take that out a little bit, and we'll work on this area in a little while. I'm just going to continue working on this base, and I'm just going to speed this up for you so we're not watching paint dry literally. Okay. All these colours are working really well. They're actually very cheerful colours. I usually tend to stick to sort of turquoise and copper and that sort of thing, but I'm enjoying doing these different colours and scraping in with the knife. This is the very small palette knife, the metal one, and creating some marks, some lines with the paint, scrape into it. It all adds texture and interest. So here we are. This first layer has now dried, and we've got some really interesting runs and drips going on here. And the first thing I'm going to do is add in some white and just soften that area. It's lost a little bit of definition, and I don't want those lines to be too harsh. So I'm going in with the titanium white, and now I'm just going to pull some of that lovely red and make some different shapes. We've got a lot of lines. We've got horizontal and vertical lines, which is fine, but I want to just soften that off a little bit now. So we're starting to build up the layers of interest and the variety of shapes. And this is a bit of a different palette knife. It's got sort of little dimples out of the side, and it's really good for making textural marks. So I'm just putting some white on and then scraping through a little bit more of that phthalo green with a bit of white there just under that line. What I'm afraid didn't show up was that I've actually drawn a few lines with some marker pens. For some reason the video decided not to do that when I was doing it, so I do apologise, but we have got some black and some white lines, and I will be adding some more later. So across the top of that green we've added that white, really makes it stand out, and just sort of patting it into place with that palette knife. And I'm going to put a little bit of that purple just underneath as well. There we go, just to add that little bit of darker definition there. So I'm going to put a little bit more down at the base as well with some more white. Now the purple works very well, but the titanium white makes it more of a lilac sort of colour. So if you want a darker colour, you need to just use it neat. And adding that red in really makes it just such a lovely, warm, rich colour. I'm not quite sure what you would call it, but it's really beautiful. Okay, so now we're just balancing colours. We're adding in more colours. There's that funny little palette knife again. Do look out for any little palette knives that you see that are a bit different, because they do add some fascinating textures. I'm just going to pick up some more white. I'm just going to start softening. There's some areas that are a little bit harsh, so I'm just going to soften those off. And add a little bit more water to help it move as well. In with that lovely yellow. Can you see how see-through it is actually becoming? Because it's got the water with it as well. It's really quite thin. And the titanium white softens it even more, makes it a really pretty shade. But you've got the richness when you use it neat. I'm going to add in a few more lines here. This is with a Posca pen. Nice pens these. Just a little bit of black, just to add a little bit of a break in this. I'm using the larger of the catalyst wedges here. I find them a little bit bulky, but they're good for covering a large area with paint, and they do spread it really thinly. So we're going to just add in a few areas, a little bit over that yellow, but not too much. I don't want to lose that soft yellow. And then just using the palette knife, the small one, to add in other colours. Just scraping some paint here, balancing up, checking that I've got colours where I want them. Now again, we'll soften that with some water, and I'm just using a different palette knife just to pull that around a little bit. while it's really runny, because it just creates a very fine sort of shade over the other colours. There we go. We'll get it to run a little bit now. There we go. I want it to actually run right the way across the top of that yellow. So I'm going to soften it down even more. And that's creating an interesting sort of colour over the white. We need to do a little bit down at this bottom edge. We've got quite a lot going up at the top and some interesting colours which I'm really keen on, and textures. So we now need to start working at the bottom part. So in this bottom left hand corner I'm actually going into a wet area. I've actually wetted the canvas board, and I'm going in with the phthalo green, neat and quite thick. And because it's already wet, you can push this about. Can you see how easy it is to push that colour? It makes it really flow. We've still got the intensity of colour. Soften that top edge a little bit. Just going to add some over this violet as well, because it just makes it lovely and dark. And pop a little bit of that red in there too. It's a really nice grounding colour mixed with the purple. There we go. That's sort of filled that bottom edge and given us a bit of grounding. And this paint is still very wet, so I'm pushing it even further using the soft catalyst knife and just really pushing it around. You see how thin it's become with the water. It makes a lovely sort of a glaze to that area there, while retaining the depth down at the bottom where we put it on. Just scraping in, getting some interesting little marks going in there. And again adding a little bit more depth. Okay, I'm adding a little bit of that reddish brown as well into the purple. It's very effective. It's given a really good pop of dark colour in the centre of that picture next to the white, which makes everything stand out. And now I'm actually using the paint on the larger of the two palette knives, the metal ones, and just pulling some lines across those colours, those areas of dark colour especially. I'm using white, and over the pale colours I'm using purple. Okay, so now I'm finished. I'm really liking some of the colours and the textures that we've got going on here. It's probably a little bit more busy than most of my abstracts, but I do like it. There's lots of interest where there are lines. We've got some beautiful colours, and just really just a feast for the eyes, to be honest. There's texture. I love those little bits of texture. That with the strange little palette knife there is really effective. You can see all different sorts of shades of colours, and I really enjoy doing this. I hope that this will inspire you to have a go, play about with different shapes, different colours, perhaps colours you wouldn't normally use, and really just explore having a little bit of fun with some abstracts. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.